morning, everyone. This is Doug Hill with our new podcast series called Built In, Not Bolted On. It's really a series that's going to be dedicated to trying to get things into the fabric of what we're doing in the safety space and make sure that it's built in, not bolted on. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about some HOP principles, but I'm really excited to have a good friend of mine and colleague, David McKeek, with us. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Doug. I am super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm super excited to have you. And David and I had some history together. We had met at several conferences, and at that time, I was still working full time for the utility. And we had just always, you meet certain people that you just have a connection with, and we've always had that, and we've always wanted to do stuff together. And now we're having the ability, now that I'm retired from the utility, to connect and do that. So I'm super excited to do this, David, and I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'm honored. Let's do it.
All right, so Nick and I ended up our introduction last week a little bit about this podcast, and I really wanted to think about how some of these things tie together, and really understanding a little bit about the people that you work with and for. Really tell you a lot about what you might or might not know about them that will make them be successful on their safety journey. So as we ended with Nick last week, we said, hey, we're going to try using this in future podcasts. So I want to start off with something a little unorthodox, David, and talking about two truths and a lie, and basically saying, hey, I think I know you pretty well, but I want to understand if I really do, because that does weigh into, self and team awareness. And when we talk about team is together, everyone achieves more. We really want to, learn more about our teammates so that we can get better in the space. So, are you game for a little two truths and a lie?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I'm gonna give you mine first. I'll tell you what. Last week I failed miserably, but I want to make sure that I do this first. So my first one I want to give you is that I played in my high school band. The second one is I played football in high school and college. And the last one is I played baseball in high school. Which do you think are truths and which do you think is a lie?
Ooh, how well do I know Doug? I do not think, Doug, that you played baseball.
That is an excellent answer, because most people know that I am a fast pitch softball guy. And once I started playing fast pitch softball, baseball became boring to me. And so you're absolutely right. I did play in my high school band and play football at the same time. So I used to run up into the stands and play an instrument at halftime and then run back into the locker room and finish a football game. I did it all the time. So, funny. So you and Nick have
So the obvious joke there, you didn't get any playing time in football, so you played in the band, so you get to play something during the game.
Exactly. I mean, you have to look at the positives on what you can get. I mean, there has to be some sunlight on this thing that makes it good, right?
I like it. All right. So I got that. All right. So that means C5 leadership, caring. I know a little something about you. So here we go. You ready for mine?
I am. Go ahead.
All right. This is going to freak you out. The first one is I've been locked up in jail before. How's that for a start? The second one is I am a Duke basketball fan. And the third one is I wake up at 5:30 every morning.
Well, I know just from working with you that the 5:30 thing is that's the truth. I don't even have to think about that one. The jail and Duke. If I were a betting guy, I would say that the lie is that you're a Duke fan.
No. So I am a Duke fan, and it's a really good time right now to be a Duke fan. The story behind the been locked up in jail is I was accidentally, long story, a scoutmaster in the Boy Scouts, and we took a tour of the police department. They were kind enough to give us one, And they locked us all up in a jail cell for about 3 minutes. So I didn't give details, but I have been locked up in a jail cell. That's a true statement. So the lie actually is I'll wake up at 5:30. I'll wake up much earlier than 5:30 most mornings.
Wow. I failed miserably in 2 weeks in a row. And Nick got me last week, and you got me now. So there again, I learned some more things about David that I didn't know, and he obviously didn't learn anything about me at all. He learned that I was a better band player than a football player.
But it's been interesting when we have conversations like this and we get to know each other a little bit, how much easier it becomes, translate this into the workplace now, to start giving each other feedback and to feel comfortable around each other, exercising stop work authority and some of those things that can be difficult in the wrong kind of culture. Really important to develop relationships. So I like the way you started this.
Yeah, and I really like starting on a light note, just trying to say, hey, if you don't know anything about your team, how can you go into some of the things? And some of the things I really want to talk about is like that leads me into my first question, thinking about, hey, what do you think the key to successful human and organizational performances? And I know we use the word HOP or HP, but it really means how that translates to building a better system around the people that you work with and making them be in a more successful environment. So what do you think are some of the keys to that with some of the things that we just started with?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that the key, not just to hop, but to anything that you're trying to do, is the word commitment. And I like to define that as how passionate you are about something. And anything you're committed to, the key that I would want people to think about is it takes time. And I feel like a lot of times with safety programs, we're looking for that one silver bullet that we can do one training class on, and we get everybody through this class and we fixed it and we've got it implemented and it's just going to work. So the key is commitment across the board, all levels of the organization, and then giving it time and understanding that anything you're trying to do, you're going to have some successes, you're going to have some failures, and learning from those. So that would be my short answer to that, is commitment and time from the whole team. That being said,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I said I completely agree. I think that the caring piece that we started with, talking about, hey, I want to learn more about David, shows that level of commitment that you put together. And when people see that you care and you're committed, those things culminate into all the other C5 principles that we talk about, with being courageous enough to speak up, as you talked about in stop work authority, making sure that you have credibility. So meaning that when you do speak up, people want to listen because they don't think that you're lost your level of commitment. So I think that everything you said there was so true. So did you have more to add to that? I'm sorry.
The one thing I was going to add to it was, I know your history and you have lived this. And I really thought that I knew a lot about human performance improvement. I'm using that term intentionally at that part, until I met you. And then I realized I knew very little about it. So I'd really be interested, and you kind of answered it with caring and committed. But what do you think is key? You've been part of a very successful implementation of human and organizational performance.
So part of what I tell people, and a lot of people, that I've had the pleasure of being around a lot of experts in this space. So we've had a lot of debates at a table about this. But the one thing that I really see valuable, and you've heard me say this, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. If the culture that you create through caring and commitment, the things that we just talked about, if you start building a culture of that, building a system to protect things that you care about are really easy. And I tell people that once our relationships got better within the utility, to where we were really committed as a partnership, meaning the union and the company, it became very easy for us to move down a path to change the system to create for our workforce. So, I think some of the keys to that are having a just culture, and a just culture is not just saying it or being compliant. It's about people doing the right thing at the right time, and it really goes back to my real theme of this is built in that whole time. Make sure it becomes part of the DNA of everything that you do. It doesn't become something that you do just to make somebody happy.
Love it. And I hear you say a lot, a couple of phrases that really resonate with me. Number one, shoulder to shoulder, not nose to nose. Number two, it's got to be a marathon and not a sprint like we talked about. And then maybe the most important part of it is the village to village concept.
Yeah, and really understanding that what you and I, if we go into each classes as we are now with other utilities, is saying, hey, it's not going to be solved in this room. I hope that out of the people that I have in this room, I take a percentage of them and I win them over and they carry it back to what I call their village or their area of expertise with their work group, and they share that. And then that group shares it with someone else. And then that's the village by village concept of building a system around it as well. And not just saying it louder and slower, but saying, hey, we really want to learn and improve. And over the course of time, people start changing their views on that. So I appreciate that.
Love it.
So a second question that I had for you is just like saying, hey, I think we answered a little bit, but what do you think are the showstoppers that we would avoid? Like, what do you think are things that you see based on what we've been working on and what have you that are just showstoppers that really hinder our ability to get better in this space?
The big thing for me, especially with the hop, is where you see it don't work. Number one, you've got to get the culture right to get human and organizational performance successfully implemented. If the culture is wrong and it's toxic, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. And
yeah, and I always say that all the experts when I'm doing this, and I say, man, everything you guys are doing is awesome. Like, I mean, there's so many great people that I could talk about in the space, but I tell them, if you go to a place to implement and they have a toxic culture, good luck. And from my vantage point, I would just say, you're really burning your money in the street. It's really not going to be a good outcome because you have to get some baseline culture that wants to make those changes, right?
Oh yeah. And the second part of that is, and I think we've all been guilty of this. I know for sure I have, is we as safety directors or safety coordinators or whatever, as we're designing programs, we really try to make them complicated and look good on paper and make it some big, huge, complex process that the folks in the field that are exposed to the most hazards, the people that need it most, could care less about. It's always like, I think it's funny, like no good reason ever that motivates an employee to be safe is because OSHA said so. That's not a knock OSHA, but I've heard a lot of people tell people that it's a rule, you have to do it. That doesn't work. So we complicate things. One of the things to make any program, especially HOP, successful, people very much care about their safety, and they very much care about going home to their families and even in the long term, being able to take their grandkids fishing or whatever it may be. They want to be safe and healthy and protected. They don't really want to follow a bunch of rules. And so making it applicable, it certainly needs to be compliant with OSHA standards and all that kind of thing, but compliance is the baseline. So focusing a lot more on tools and practical applications that people can use to be safe, rather than all the principles and theories and that sort of thing. So overcomplicating it would be one of the biggest obstacles or showstoppers, I think, to anything that you try to do in safety.
Yeah, and you also one thing that you touched on there is that not only do we need to make it easy for the frontline people that are out there with a shovel and hammer at the front line, that's the biggest bulk of what we're talking about. But I think that we also neglect looking at the work through the lens of all the other people that are there, meaning engineering. Like I remember going into some trainings where engineering groups said to me, I don't know why we're in the safety training. We have nothing to do with the safety of this company. There again, the showstopper is that they don't think it applies to them. So immediately that takes them out of the element. So like some of the showstoppers for me are making sure that you see things through the lens that other people see through. And I know that in my prior job, being able to work with executive level people, seeing the company through an executive person's lens. Also, you have to give them tools that they can get better in the space with, so that they can use them through the lens that they see through, not just through one dimensional. And I can tell you that that was another place where success really moved based on that. So, anything else on that?
The red, blue, and the black line: work imagined, work performed, and work disclosed. And if you're not familiar with that, go look it up sometime. But that's a great, I think, indicator of your culture, is if you could get those three lines at least pretty close together. You're never going to get them all three lined up, but certainly from engineering to accounts payable to IT to the folks in the field to the top level executives, everybody influences people's ability to work safe, whether they realize it or not. And we all got to be part of the same team. You said it earlier. Together, everyone accomplishes more.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like I just say that that's probably one of my best growth periods as a safety professional was realizing that when I went out there and looked at somebody's job through the lens that they see the job through, I was like, wow, no wonder they can't see some of these things, because they're looking at it from a totally different perspective. So that also was, one of the things that I would tell people to get better at. So think about, what are some tools that you think are, most helpful, like to continuously improve and find success in this space? Like, tell me a couple tools that really resonate with you.
Well, my favorite tool is the E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome. And I think if you start with that, because any tool, right? Any tool is designed to really do three things for us. It allows us to give us time to think, focus our attention, and then allow us to maintain positive control of their work. So for any tool to be successful, step one has to be a brief little pause and actually think about, what do we want the outcome here to be? And if you do a really good job of explaining or defining for yourself what the outcome is, your response becomes automatic. But if you really look, most of the time when things go wrong, it's because we just don't take that 4 or 5 second pause and think about what we want. So for me, that's always the starting point. It relates a lot to the self-checking tool in human performance of stop, think, act, review. And I like to apply that E plus R during that thinking stage. But that's one for me. And then I think maybe the number one thing that I've learned from you about HOP is everything starts with what performance mode you're in. And if you don't understand what performance mode you're in, you can't really properly apply the tool that's going to be most effective for that performance mode. So I think it would be very useful for the listeners if you might talk just a little bit about performance modes and what tools to apply based on that.
And I think that the performance modes themselves, I mean, when you're in skill based, you're doing something that you're really familiar with and you've been there a lot of times. And we use driving a lot. We use, brushing your teeth, making coffee. Those are all things. And really the tool to make sure that you don't have some level of complacency when you're doing something that you're really familiar with. Because the key to that is that you're doing something you've done, roughly 50 to 100 times in a short period of time. And it's really not about the number. It's about the, understanding that you're doing something repetitive. But the tool for that is to really just say it out loud. Just like if you're going to go out there and, we use the example about your garage door. If you back out, push the button, say garage door down, watch it go down, touch the ground. When I come to work, if David asked me if I close my garage door, I will say yeah, because the cognitive of using that tool will move it into your memory and become part of it. And a lot of why they say it out loud is because it becomes cognitive. The second one is around rule based and really talking about, there's a rule and I know where to find it. It's there. We have the ability to go get it. I could say, David, do you know where the rule is? He says, yes, goes and gets it, brings it to us. And the tool to use with that one is really step by step, just meaning that when we open up the book itself will not do a thing for you. I think a lot of people think that when you have rules in your hand, that's going to protect you. If you don't know how to follow them step by step and they're not written in a way that you can, it becomes a barrier. So we always say the tool for that is step by step, following things step by step, and making sure the rule has the ability to be followed step by step. If not, speaking up and making sure those changes that take place. And the last one being knowledge based, meaning that you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people use different acronyms for that, but it's really about having that ability, that lack of knowledge. And one of the key elements to seeing that is making sure that when you hear things like, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, when you hear people say trigger words like that, those are all things where you should actually stop and seek out help. And then David led us off with that, talking about stop work authority at the place where you should exercise stop work authority and say, we're going to stop, David. We're going to go get the rule. We're going to follow it step by step. We're going to say it out loud. And we're going to move ourselves from those bad ratios. Skill-based starts off at 1 in 1,000. If you use the tool, it multiplies by a factor of 10, which is 1 in 10,000. If it's rule-based, you use step by step. You're moving from 1 in 100 to 1 in 1,000. If you combine those two and say it out loud, you can move yourself to that 1 in 10,000. And the key element in knowledge base is for people to know that the best you can be in is 1 in 10 to as high as a failure rate of 50%. So if I told David, hey, you might fail 50% of the time, how long would you want to stay there, David?
Damn, that's brilliant. I told you, I thought I knew about this stuff till I met you. So quick challenge to everybody. And this is just to reinforce one of those tools, because this is one place where it's really helped me. I would imagine for most all of us, you've left a hotel room, walked down the hall with your luggage, got to the elevator, and like, oh man, did I forget such and such? And so I've started a habit of say it out loud as I'm packing things up in my hotel room. Here's my computer. Here's the toiletry bag. Here's, whatever. And you say it out loud as you go in there, and you go down the hall with your luggage, and you get to the elevator, and there's no doubt you don't feel the need to go back to your room. And so I would challenge everybody just to learn that tool, is pick a simple task like that and say it out loud and see how much doubt you have. And if you find that works, it might be really worthwhile to teach that tool to your team at work and start saying things out loud to confirm. It's a team self-check at that point in time, and you're using the verification tool a little bit. So I love that tool. It's so nice to walk down the hall confident that you have packed everything and not let anything.
Yeah, I think that there again, making it practical and saying, hey, at no point am I going to run up to David in the middle of the hallway and say, hey, can you recite the performance mode for HOP? There again, if it becomes too biblical and it's not practical, it's very difficult for them to see that. But using something like he talked about with packing up, I do exactly the same thing. And it's mostly because I'm traveling a lot, and if I did that, I would be leaving stuff behind all the time. So just making sure that when I'm in that knowledge base, that I'm actually steering myself towards rule or skill to improve my standing. So the last thing that I wanted to steer into that's excellent conversation, and it probably could be a whole nother podcast in the scope talking about those, because there's a lot of elements that we could share. Are there any other resources that you see that along the way with HOP that have that has more potential? Like, what is there anything that you see that's valuable that has potential to help us along the way, David?
So we kind of alluded to this already, but one of the most important things is to identify champions and make it happen at the peer-to-peer level. And then the absolute probably key point I would say to this is we said earlier, commitment and time. But too often with safety in particular and everything we're trying to do, we focus so much on what we're doing wrong and what's going bad and everything we got to fix. You want to get a program right and you want to make HOP work, find successes and learn lessons from those. Because one of two things is going to happen. You are either going to repeat errors and reduce successes, or you can repeat success and reduce errors. And so that would be the thing, is figure out what's working, why it's working, and use that. I mean, it's important to learn lessons from when we fail and when we make errors. Absolutely, for sure. But the value of positively reinforcing what's right and identifying what's right and understand it. So, you ingrain it in people at that point in time. Once they see value in it, once they care about it, it's going to work. But if it's all just about what we're doing wrong and what we got to fix, never going to work.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think you've heard me say this a lot. I said if we drive to work successfully for a year and we don't have any accidents, we assume that there were no close calls or anything else. And even though we drove to work successfully, there's things that we can learn from the success. Maybe we had a close call with the neighbor's dog or at a particular corner that's blind, whatever the case might be. But the things that we talk about in success will be probably the things that we'll learn the most, because something that you did successfully, if we did it successfully, we want to repeat it, as David said, but we also want to say, hey, what were the close calls where we were lucky, not good? And because we want to, shorten up the luck box a little bit and put ourselves in a better place. That kind of goes back to built in, that bolted on. Make sure that it becomes built in to talk about successful work. I'm not just saying because there was no incident, we don't need to talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, quick question for you. You speak English, you speak it well. You actually have a really good podcast voice. How did you learn to speak English? Do you remember that?
I, I was from an old era, so my dad probably roughed me up while I was going on, but I'd say no, I just make fun of that. But you just have to continuously do things successfully and unsuccessfully until you get it right.
Yeah, I guess that's my point. But most of us probably don't remember learning English, but we speak it and we speak it well. Why? Because somebody taught us and we were exposed and around people that were doing it, quote unquote, the right way. And we learned it. And because that worked for us, we kept repeating it and we kept wanting to learn more about it. And it's something that we're all really good at, but we continue to learn new words, new phrases, new vocabulary and whatnot. And I think that's kind of a good model for training and the implementation of any program is show people continuously the right way to do it, show them the benefits of doing it the right way, and make it a continuous learning process. You don't even realize this happened.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because I think that you know, being a great role model for something that's going well, there again, expands the village to village. It means that the three that you and I impact in the room today in a training will impact three more, and they'll impact three more, and they'll impact three more, because they see that it's repeatable, and they also see that there's success in it, and it also creates a good environment. The other part of having this is that when you start creating a good environment where people talk about their failures and successes, it becomes very comfortable to talk about just about anything. And you're constantly learning and improving, instead of standing in front of the class and saying, hey, we need to blame someone, or we need to say it louder and slower, because David, obviously you didn't, hear it the first time. Right.
Yeah, you brought us full circle to where we started with two truths and a lie. It ultimately boils down to how comfortable are we communicating to each other? How well do we know each other? Not maybe necessarily in terms of being best friends or anything like that, but identifying what's going to work well, how people prefer to communicate, making it comfortable for people to communicate. You do that well, you got it built in and not bolted on.
Absolutely. Well, David, this has been amazing, man. I knew it was gonna be. I'm so excited that you were able to be here and just help me start kicking this series off. I look forward to doing this more in the future, just coming back on a regular basis to just kind of go over the things that we're learning out there as instructors too in the space together. So is there anything like you'd really want to wrap up? I mean, we covered a lot of ground, but we also circled back to where we started, like you said, with Two Truths and a Lie. But is there anything that you could think of from closing remarks that really stand out to you from the podcast today?
I would think back to the tools and a couple of the examples we gave. I always tell people, practice these things in low stress, low risk, low hazard environments. And if you find value in them and make them habits, they'll be available when you really need them. If you wait to try these tools till you're in a high stress, high hazard, high risk environment, that's probably not going to work out real well. So that's kind of my thought. But more importantly, I find a lot of value, and it adds a lot of credibility to my name to come do podcasts with people like you that are really intelligent and just not say much at all, which I've tried to do today, and let you talk. So bring us on, man.
Well, I appreciate everything that you're doing with and for me, and this has been an incredible journey. And I hope all of you listeners, are intrigued to want to come back and listen to what the next venture. I look forward to bringing some more guests on and working on all those elements that David and I discussed today. And I want to make sure that people drive things into the fabric of what they're doing in their company, and it doesn't become something that they use as a flavor of the month. So with that, I'd like to, say I thank you for all this time, and I look forward to being a better service to you in the future. And always make sure that it's built in, not bolted on. Make sure that what you're doing is built into what you're doing, and take care of yourselves and each other. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes with your company management prior to implementation.